on our ability to develop integrated solutions that link our energy capabilities. What do these solutions look like? What roles do we have to play in leveraging these solutions for growth? What are the factors that we must consider? A look, for example, at the 2025 budget here in Nigeria would reveal that there's been an increase in allocation to infrastructure from 6.63% in 2024 to 8.16% in 2025, showing a strategic, shift in allocation to infrastructure, capital projects, particularly, we're looking at power and power sector advancement. So how do we leverage these opportunities? Knowing this information, where really do the opportunities lie? That's why we're gathered here together under the theme, Driving Gas and Infrastructure Opportunities in Africa, with a focus on Nigeria. As a forward-thinking bank, Stanbic IBTC, a forward-thinking financial institution, has pulled together global executives from our parent company, Standard Bank Group. We've also brought in key stakeholders and leaders, visionary leaders, as well as regulatory authorities, all who will be joining us on this stage to share from their wealth of knowledge. They'll be sharing valuable insights that would help us see how best we can leverage growth in the gas and the infrastructure sector. And the good news is we also get a chance to ask them questions. So at some point, we'll be taking questions from the audience as well as the virtual audience. So please, if you're joining us live on YouTube, do drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if at any point a question jumps at you, drop your questions in the chat box, and I'll be very glad to take your questions. But once again, I'd like to urge you to engage fully with today's activities and embrace the various opportunities that lie ahead. Welcome once again. My name is Olive MOD. I'm a lawyer. I'm a TV host with News Central Television, and I'm very delighted to be your compere today. Can I humbly ask that we give Stanbic IBT's remarkable event, and maybe give yourselves a round of applause as well for being here and being here early enough. Now, to kickstart this event, I'd like to welcome someone who's at the helm of this innovative financial institution, passionate about driving growth, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa. He, of course, with his wealth of experience in banking, has contributed to continually steering Stanbic IBTC, I beg your pardon, towards basically excellence. And we continue to see that not just in this conference, but in the way that Stanbic IBT has continued to accelerate. And can we please, with a loud applause, welcome our Chief Executive, Stanbic IBTC, for the welcome address. Please welcome with me Mr. Wole Adeniyi, as he please joins us on stage. Can we please welcome Mr. Wole Adeniyi with a louder applause?
Thank you, Olive. Please, Olive, thank you. I think we need to hire you in our bank. Thank you. Distinguished guests, esteemed partners, and valued stakeholders, we really welcome you to today's event. Today we convene under a theme that is both urgent and essential, driving gas and infrastructure opportunity in Africa with a focus on Nigeria. And in Standard Bank, we say Africa is our home, we drive our growth. And that means Nigeria is our home, we drive the growth. So we look at Africa, but here today, action. A collective effort to harness Nigeria's vast resources and create sustainable growth for our nation and the continent at large. Africa transition towards cleaner energy. At least Africa has to rethink its own strategy with Trump's and the death of geopolitics today. As the world transition towards cleaner energy, Nigeria's abundant gas reserve presents a unique opportunity to bridge the energy gap while ensuring sustainability. Infrastructure, on the other hand, is the backbone of economic development, connecting industry, empowering communities, and fostering trade. At Stanbic IBTC, we recognize the transformative power of finance in development. Recently, we got an approval for a $350 billion Infrastructure Fund 2, and it's a testament to our commitment to driving growth in energy and infrastructure. The first $100 billion has been fully utilized, and then we raised additional $350 billion in infrastructure fund that has now been approved. However, true progress demands collaboration, innovation, and a shared purpose beyond individual efforts. I have some critical stakeholders here today, and to our regulators and government partners, we commend your investment-friendly policies These reforms are more than policies, they are blueprints for a future where gas-fueled industrialization and infrastructure drive inclusive prosperity. To our private sector stakeholders, Nigeria is ripe with opportunities. With over 200 million people, geographical positioning and untapped potential, our market is primed for ambitious and transformative investment. At Stanbic IBTC, we go beyond finance. We serve as a coach, committed to surpassing businesses in unlocking their. We must acknowledge the challenges that we face: funding gap, regulatory complexities, and the need for technological advancement. However, these are not obstacles, they are opportunity to innovate. Blended finance models, public-private partnership, and digital infrastructure solutions provide pathways to innovative ideas and foster meaningful partnership. Progress thrives on collaboration to drive sustainable development across Africa. Thank you for your time, presence, and commitment to shaping a prosperous future. I wish all of us a very productive deliberation. Thank you so much.
Once again, can we please put our hands together again for our Chief Executive? Thank you very much, sir. And I hope that the one thing we can think about or pick from there is that it's a collective responsibility. It's not something that one person, industry players, regulatory authorities, we all have to work together to drive this growth. Before I proceed, I'd like to welcome to please come to the front the active executive, Stanbic IBTC Holdings, Mr. Kunle Adedeji. Please, a round of applause for him as he joins us in front. Thank you very much, sir. They said if I didn't invite you to the front, they will not pay me my balance. ICRC.
She's beyond average, and I think everybody needs someone like this. She's beyond average, and I think everybody needs someone like this. All right. I want to stand on the already established protocol because of time. I'm allotted 15 minutes, but I don't know if it's enough to do justice to this keynote address. Because when you talk about infrastructure in Nigeria, it's a very germane question. Nigeria is not where it is today because of lack of infrastructure, not because of lack of human resources or mineral resources. We have what it takes of human resources or mineral resources. We have what it takes to be the USA of Africa, which I think we are actually. But we'll get there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to be invited as a keynote speaker at this energy and infrastructure keynote speaker at this energy and infrastructure conference of the Stanbic IBTC Bank. How we can shape the future of Nigeria infrastructure space, driving transformative change that will propel our nation towards greater prosperity and sustainable development. Allow me to quote Kofi Annan. According to him, he said, "Infrastructure forms the foundation of any thriving economy. Without it, a sustainable future remains out of reach." These words resonate deeply with our mission today. As a regulator overseeing infrastructure development in Nigeria, through the public-private partnership model, my assignment this morning is to provide context, set the agenda, and offer insight into the government vision for the infrastructure sector. Our journey towards sustainable economic growth aims on building resilient infrastructure. This is more than just a challenge. It is a call to action for us as a nation. Gas export, particularly LNG, are a key source of foreign exchange earnings for Nigeria. LNG is a major contributor to the Nigerian economy and plays a vital role in the country's revenue generation, within global demand for a cleaner energy. Increasing. Nigerian gas exports, especially to Europe and Asia, are expected to grow further. LNG is being seen today as a lower carbon alternative to coal and oil, boosting Nigeria's standing as a critical player in the energy transition. Nigeria's gas sector holds significant potential for growth due to its large reserve and ongoing development in exploration and production technologies. Investment in infrastructure in this sector, such as pipeline, processing plant, and storage facilities, to fully realize Nigerian gas potential. The government is committed to leveraging private sector financing to achieve this goal, and I think that's one of the reasons we are gathered here today. Also, Nigeria is at a crucial junction in its journey towards national development, with immense potentials ahead. The government is committed to expanding infrastructure and fostering strategic partnership to achieve sustainable growth, recognizing that sustainable and modern infrastructure is a vital driver of economic and social development. The government is focused on ensuring investment in critical infrastructure that support long-term economic prosperity. To boldly address this infrastructure gap, the President of Nigeria today, His Excellency, GCFR, unveiled in 2024 an infrastructure plan that targets initial take-up fund of 20 trillion naira. The fund is targeted at closing Nigeria's $878 billion infrastructure gap by deploying as much as 35 billion yearly up to 2024. Nigeria's huge infrastructure deficit requires that the government thinks outside the box. With the Renew Hope Infrastructure Fund catalyzing to drive infrastructure development, given the country's budgetary constraint, in 2025, out of the 54.9 trillion approved by the National Assembly, the capital allocated stood at 23.96 trillion, representing 44% of the total budget. This budgetary allocation would not address our infrastructure challenges of intentional steps, but intentional steps must be taken to attract private sector financing in Nigerian infrastructure. As a government, we are shifting focus from briefcase investors to attracting specialists, capital-ready partners for our critical infrastructure project. And I think Stanbic IBTC is one of them. Most important, proactively explore innovative financing mechanisms to mobilize private sector capital. One of the ways the federal government is exploring and implementing innovative financing solutions to support projects and initiatives by ensuring financial sustainability and efficiency is through the ICRC Public-Private Partnership Drive. In ICRC, we are leveraging the private sector expertise and investment for public projects and services and helping to enhance the funding of infrastructure in Nigeria. The President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, while he was appointing me, with the mandate he gave to me, he said, I should go with my team in ICRC and accelerate investment in national infrastructure through innovative mobilization of private sector funding. And that is the commitment me and my team in ICRC have taken to ensure that we keep to the charge of Mr. President. And that is why I'm here today, to tell you that the President and the country is in need of innovative financing to bridge the infrastructure gap that we have in Nigeria. There are critical project opportunities in Nigeria. Of recent, one of the most successful projects in Nigeria that attracts private sector funding of $1.58 billion is the Lekki Deep Seaport. And I'm happy my sister is here today. We were just discussing about it before this program. She played a very key role. It was very personal to her. She worked day and night to ensure that the Lekki Deep Seaport today is a success. And that project alone shows the capacity and the belief that the private sector have in Nigeria, and the fact that we're a good destination for investment. Because as we were discussing just now, she said, when we're doing this project, it took us 11 years to commission that project. We have to fight over 40 permits on the way, regulatory concerns. But guess what? Immediately we finish, everybody started coming that they want to come in, they want to invest, they want to be part of it. But nobody was ready to be in the kitchen while they were doing that. Now, the Lekki Deep Seaport is the only deep seaport in Nigeria. It's the largest in West Africa. And at the end of his years, or 45-year concession period, the revenue due to government is about $361 billion. After 45 years, from our initial investment of $1.58 billion. I don't have to tell you how investor-friendly Nigeria is. But for those that are there, those that have the stamina, those that have the resilience, those that have the belief in our country, that's what our challenge is, to say we will thrive on. They have no reason to regret. And there are more stories we can talk about that. To further unlock the investment opportunities in the marine sector, the Bakassi Deep Sea Port is receiving an investment of $3.5 billion from Afrexim. This deal is almost reaching conclusion. I mean, you can Google it. The governor of Cross River State recently was in Egypt to sign an initial agreement plan. And they are working assiduously in not too long a time. ICRC will give the final for them to proceed to FEC to get the final clearance to sign the agreement. So these are the kind of opportunities that are born in the infrastructure sector in Nigeria. Another beautiful project I have to mention, that's the custom modernization project. That's a project cost of about $3.2 billion. And the first phase is about $300 million. Let me tell you a story as the director then. The first phase was $300 million. The promoters were required to pay a bond of 3% of the first phase of the investment, which comes to about $9 million. I won't mention name, but they're supposed to syndicate that loan through a consortium of banks. And they were giving them all investment. That MD of a bank, I won't mention the name, got wind of the project. He was in London. He flew in from London to Abuja. And he gave them that bond that they required. And he gave them the commitment of they are smiling to the bank. The opportunities in Nigeria is huge. We just have to dare. And I'm here to challenge every DC. You have to dare. Now, the Nigerian government president has launched on the Renew Hope Cities and Exit program of Mr. President. And I'm happy to tell you that players in the housing sector in Nigeria are coming together. ICRC is leading on that to fine-tune and re-strategize on ways to unlock the potential in the housing sector by streamlining access to fund, access to land, access to funding. And I can tell you that it's one of the cardinal programs that is to the president, and the opportunities are big. We were here last week to discuss it. I think we've agreed to come up with a policy and a guideline that will boost the housing sector in Nigeria. Well, the road sector, the final one I will speak to because of time. The one that we just did recently, it's what you call the Highway Development and Management Initiative in Nigeria. It's a strategic initiative designed to address road infrastructure, in particular in terms of maintaining and developing our highways. The initial aims is to modernize, maintain, and expand Nigerian road network through PPP, facilitating the efficient management and financing of road development projects. The AGMI encourages MDAs to leverage private sector expertise in technology financing for road construction and maintenance operation. The government aim is to reduce the financial burden. It's 1.1 trillion naira of private sector investment. And this has attracted private sector funding from multiple organizations like the African Plus Consortium, AFC and Motor Angel Consortium, China Harbor, and a host of others. The second phase is on board and is ongoing. They are doing evaluation. It's also presenting opportunities for people to come in and invest. And I think I can talk about that, much about that in the panel session. As I conclude, because of time, I'm skipping a lot of my paper. I want to reiterate that Nigeria's vast opportunities in infrastructure is driven by growing population, as the ED said, rapid urbanization, and the government commitment to sustainable development. As Africa's largest economy, Nigeria requires significant investment in infrastructure to meet the economy and enhance the life of its citizens. So today, I urge all stakeholders to think ambitiously and work collectively. We must go beyond the annual rituals of gathering stakeholders, professionals, and policymakers. We must walk the talk. The time to act is now. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the catalyst for change in our country. We must be the and in the infrastructure sector of Nigeria. Nigeria needs to realize its aspiration, and this must be done urgently. This is not a time for passive observation, but a time for active participation. Let us collaborate, let us innovate, and invest in the infrastructure future of this Nigeria. Thank you, and God bless.
Can we please put our hands together once again? I know that we couldn't take everything that he wanted us to take, which is why we have the panel session. We're very glad that we can ask more questions. He's going to be our first panelist today. So many things were spoken about, so many opportunities that I'm hoping we can dig deeper into when we get to the panel conversations. But whilst he was speaking, he did speak about the Lekki Deep Port project and mentioned pivotal in the Lekki Deep Sea Port project from financial close in 2020 to construction completion in 2022 and commercial operation in 2023. She's a seasoned lawyer with a background in commercial practice and litigation, having spent over 10 plus years at KPMG Professional Services, specializing in tax, regulatory, and people services. Please join me as I welcome the MD CEO Lagos Free Zone, my learned colleague, or my learned senior, Adesu Aladoja, as she please comes forward. A round of applause for her. And our next panelist has over 34 years of professional experience in the American technological space and the Nigerian oil and gas industry. He began his career as a logic board verification engineer at Apple in Dallas, Texas, before returning to Nigeria to join the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, now NNL, where he held various top management positions. Please join me to welcome the Authority Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Midstream. Please welcome with me the GM. Please welcome with me the GM Integrated Gas Development. Yetun, she joins us on the stage. Thank you very much, ma'am. I always like to say this. I will not be Nigerian if I don't say last but not the least. I'd like to welcome someone who has an extensive experience in Europe and Africa, structuring and financing transactions. He previously served as head of investment banking, Kenya and East Africa, head of energy and infrastructure. Prior to joining banking, Kenya and East Africa, head of energy and infrastructure. Prior to joining Standard Bank, he was an associate director at Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi UFJ, and he's also served in various capacities at PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte in London. He currently serves as the sector lead infrastructure client coverage Standard Bank. Please, a round of applause as I welcome to join us on the stage. As I welcome to join us on the stage. And now to link these points that are on your heart, I'd like to welcome our moderator. She's a seasoned professional with years experience in the financial services industry, specializing in sectors such as oil and gas, large conglomerates, and investment and project financing. She's currently the head of client coverage, Stanbic IBTC Bank, where she has been instrumental in building high-performing teams and identifying sustainable investment opportunities. Please welcome with me Joyce Timper as she moderates this panel session. Make the applause a little louder. Thank you.
As a country and how we as a nation are going to bridge this gap. So we brought the strategic enablers. We also have the regulators here as well. I would say that I wanted to share with you that the panelists, we're going to go straight into it, go into our discussion today, look at the bridging the infrastructure gap, look at gas, and also, but the panelists, I'm going to first start with asking you questions, but I'm also going to welcome questions from our online and also our audience. But I'll start with you first, Dr. Jobson. You've given us an excellent keynote speech, and you've also shared with us and given us an overview of the infrastructure sector, but you've also talked about gas. But the first question is, given the current deficit in infrastructure, we have limited revenue, what innovative mechanisms are we exploring to bridge the infrastructure gap, and how are we financing these investments in road, rail, port and air transport infrastructure to maximize economic growth and regional connectivity? I hope it's not a very long question.
It's very long because it cuts across a lot of areas. But if I will have to take the lead, and that is how we're financing. If I get you clear, Joyce?
Yes, sir.
How are we financing?
So it's not just financing, so it's really just innovative mechanisms. So beyond what we're doing today, we know that private sectors, we know there's PPPs, we also know there's blended finance, but we just want to look at overall. So we have a wide audience here today. So beyond the financing mechanisms, we're also going to be looking for other measures.
All right. I think, let me start by saying that one of the first move we have made as a country and as an agency and as government we are doing today is to reduce the regulatory requirement to assess finance and also to close transactions. Most of the bureaucracy and bottlenecks, there are already policy in place to unlock those potentials and streamline the processes. Like I did say, during the Lekki Deep Sea Port, they were faced with a lot of regulatory issues and concerns. That at some point, I remember they were complaining of regulatory fatigue. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things that we didn't finance or raising funds is that the enabling environment is being created to allow private sector investment to thrive. I'll give you an example, like my agency. One of the things we did when we came on board is to streamline all our processes down. That today it's easy for any investor that have finance to approach us and say, we have the necessary finance, we're interested in this project. So what we do is that we go above just sitting down in our office and waiting for people to. If you have any good idea and you know you have necessary avenues to raise funds, if you approach ICRC, I don't wait for you. I step out on your behalf to meet necessary agency or minister responsible for that project, and we'll sit down and fashion a way whereby we can develop that project and take it to the market. So, by and large, I think, like I said, I don't talk about the other, the blended finance option, is that the bottlenecks in attracting funding for this funding infrastructure are being removed, and the regulatory concerns are being reduced. The platform, the enabling environment is there now for private sector investment in building Nigerian infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And this is, what are the major challenges?
With a profitable model that more or less drives the investment that is being put in place. The upstream today is plagued with quite a number of challenges. Definitely, I mean, for those who know more about the operations of the upstream, and first MP where I work, we are offshore. So, well, you could be investing almost $40 million US. So with that kind of investment, you know what you have invested. And so the best way, and I think that's how the government has been able to help, is by giving you incentives that allow you either on the cost recovery side, in other words, you are paying less tax than you should normally be paying, getting or extracting, and even operators like us, some comfort is the fact that, you know, these incentives are given with the intention that in future you will be able to get some of these tax benefits that you have been given. There needs to be that assurance that as you are investing today, when the time comes for you to claim those tax benefits, you will be able to. And I think that's where the regulator can actually come in. If there are clear guidelines as to how you can actually receive those incentives, I think it should be brought up front. So as you are investing, you are either giving some instrument, I don't know what that will look like, but it gives you that assurance that 5 years down the line, when it's time for you to recover those incentives for which you've made those investments, you don't have any bottlenecks. I'm mindful of time. I'll quickly talk about the midstream as well. I mean, that's
steps can we take as Nigeria to become a regional hub, gas hub for West Africa? And what infrastructure and investments are essential for this goal?
Okay, thank you very much. We all know for you to be a regional hub, you must have the commodity in place. In Nigeria, we have the fields that produce the gas. Like my colleague have said, we have the fields that produce the gas. Like my colleague have said here, even though the investment is very huge, but we are also working, the government is working assiduously to make incentive strategy stocks that will be put in place. When I go back to the policies, as she has asked, you know, the PIA has made it that the policy regime now is not like the previous era, where the regulatory part of the industry is prescriptive, in the sense that you just wake up and a law is just passed and you have to obey it, whether it is good or bad. But the PIA has made it now that we move prescriptive to dynamic regulation, where there is serious engagement with the stakeholders. Last year, the Authority Chief Executive has passed about 18 regulations. And in draft regulations, we didn't do them single-handedly. The law requires us that we should publish these regulations in both our website and also the print media, and give 21 days notice for stakeholders to review and give their input, and we sit down and discuss this input. So you discover now that the regulation is actually friendly, stakeholders friendly. So to make Nigeria a hub, we consistently and continuously benchmark our regulation with the global regulation. Where we see that our own is very stringent, we try to bring it down. Where the investors or the stakeholder players have tried to run our regulation and discover that there are some bottlenecks. At one point, last year, like I said, the Authority Chief Executive, Engineer Farouk, signed 18 regulations. But just between last year and December, after running those regulations, it required that we need to review some of those regulations. And actually, we have reviewed some few, and we are reviewing others. Also, to be a regional hub or a global, we have LNG storages where people can import LNGs outside to start to meet demand, where your production is not meeting the regional demand. And with that, you will discover that the regional demand. And with that, you will discover that Nigeria will actually be a regional. So let me just stop. Nigeria will actually be a regional. So let me just stop here because the story is very, very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to move to someone who is an investor, tried and tested. Investors, and we heard the big figure, 316 billion. When I heard that figure, I was actually very excited that we're expecting that amount of money. But I wanted to say to you first and just ask about the free trade zones. What can we do to boost industrialization, looking at public-private partnerships in Nigeria, and how can the framework be improved to attract more investment?
I assume that's for me, right?
Yes, I think so.
So Lagos Free Zone is 860 hectares of land situated in Ibejuleki area of Lagos. And it's integrated with a deep sea port, which makes it the first private port in Nigeria with an integrated deep sea port. Now, our vision has been to become the industrial and logistics hub in West Africa with world-class infrastructure and services. Now, a huge critical success factor for that is having a deep sea port which transforms Nigeria into a maritime hub in Africa. And to enable us to get that achieved, we utilized the PPP structure. So we had private foreign investors, Toleram and China in the process. What were the challenges that we experienced, which we believe if they are worked upon, then these things go easier, because PPP is tried and tested all over the world, and it's a proven model for bridging the infrastructure gap, which we have in Nigeria. So what we found is that there's a need to strengthen the regulatory environment, making it more transparent and efficient. Doctor has alluded to the fact that we had so many regulatory permits and approvals to obtain. Now, what it was that we just looked through all the laws of the Federation of Nigeria, and we came up with a list of 38 to 40 permits. In fact, some of them were just permits that were on the books. They didn't have any guidelines developed around that. So we had to work with the regulatory agencies to develop them and then get the applicable fees and begin to apply for them with the relevant documentation. You also had instances where some of these permits were obtained from multiple agencies. So you will require, for instance, a dredging permit from 3 different agencies. You require environmental permits from federal and state agencies. The uncertainty around it and the cost associated with this and the time factor are things that we should look into. ICRC really was very concerned about it and was determined to help us resolve the issue, but it was impossible at the time. And because we were raising funds internationally, we had to satisfy all the regulatory compliance. So if we can have this more streamlined and more efficient, it will definitely be more productive for everybody. Secondly, we found that the risk allocation between the private and the public sector was a bit skewed in favor of government. Yes, it's a big, there's a reward when you invest in Nigeria, but at the same time, as government, there are certain things that you're required to do to create that enabling environment. For instance, with regards to the road infrastructure, it was very important for cargo to be evacuated from the port so that we don't recreate the Apapa scenario at the Lekki axis. So it was important for government to commit to having the roads enhanced and maintained before the port project was completed. I mean, that is eventually now happening, but at the time that the port was being constructed, we didn't have a lot of clarity around that, which was a bit of a problem for us as well. Contracts enforcement and dispute resolution mechanisms need to be strengthened. There's no doubt that with this kind of projects, there will be conflicts, there will be disagreements along the way, and maybe a tribunal setup will be very helpful to resolve some of these things in a very, very efficient manner. Also, financing framework needs enhancement. There needs to be access to long-term affordable financing because that remains an obstacle. I mean, Stanbic IBTC is doing very well in this. They've been a partner with us along the way, but more is required in terms of expanding the local currency financing options in Nigeria. ICRC, as the regulatory agency for PPP, has been very helpful to all of us in the process, right from the first DG to the present DG. They've been very supportive with our quest to bring infrastructure to Nigeria, and they need to continue to do more to support foreign investors that choose the PPP model as, you know, the way to invest in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so much. It's so clear. So there's regulation. So we need to streamline the number of permits. We also need to work through the financing that is required for projects of this order. Would you like to make any comments before we move on? Because I saw him smiling.
Yeah, I'm smiling because me and Adesua and my colleagues in ICRC have been, how does the military say it? Comrades in arms, or how do you say, or partners in this business, because I remember, I feel the pain and I know what they passed through. Not being able to raise funds, they injected about $100 or $200 million of their own equity capital to start the breakwater walls of that place, to convince investors that they believe in the project and they have a skin in the game. When we go on regulatory visits, we see them, they've gone far into it with their own equity. We remember that they couldn't raise finance at some point. And as at that time, federal government was having 20% share in the XPV. But to enable them raise finance, government to divest its own shares to just 5% in that project. So that's the support that we get. And I quite understand, and I said it in my keynote address, that at some point they have regulatory fatigue. Because they don't even know which, regulators will come their way again. So for me, and just what she said is that there must be that belief in what we do. There must be that, as I said, we must have the stamina to withstand Nigeria's peculiar infrastructure terrain. And she talked about streamlining the regulatory framework for PPPs in Nigeria. Honestly, I say this with all sense of authority, that there's one person that is leading the charge, that is leading from the front in doing that, is Mr. President. He says it every day you meet him. Please, if any MDAs, any regulator is giving you a problem, come to me directly. I will ensure that is done. And he said during the NESG conference of 2023 that his government is a government of PPP. He is a champion of PPP. So he believes in PPP. So if there's any time in the country, any time in the history of this country that we want PPP to grow, it is now. But the president is leading the charge and is open for business. So what I want to say is that, yes, we have our challenges, but we should not dwell on the past. It's a different kettle of fish now. The environment is different. That's why I said one of the things we did when we came on board, was to streamline our processes to make sure that investors have confidence in investing in Nigeria. And she said something also, risk allocation in structuring PPPs. Well, for me, that's very key. When you're involved in PPP, you identify the risk, you assess the risk, you prioritize the risk, and you allocate it to the best party suited to handle the risk. And most often the time, you have that challenge, you have that problem that government wants to handle less risk and push the much of the risk to the private sector, or skill to the private sector, for many reasons. One, you have the expertise to do it. That's our belief. You have the technology, you don't have the bureaucracy that government has. So most times, the issue of risk is settled during the contract negotiation. That is why both parties must understand the impact of the risk, and both parties must accept, who is going to take that risk. And finally, before I go, the most important element in any PPP project is the concession agreement, is the agreement. You must ensure that you look at every details of it. It's a live document. For the Lekki, the phase 1 is 45 years. Nobody that is part of that negotiation will be alive at the end of that. Will be around. But if I don't want to say alive, sorry. Well, the first phase is 45 years. For another 45 years, that's 90 years. I don't know who will be around in 90 years from now. So the first phase is 45 years. For another 45, making 90. So clearly, at the end of that first phase, everybody will have retired. Nobody that was part of that negotiation will still be in business then. But what will speak then is the agreement that the parties have signed. And we learn. PPP was a new concept for us in Nigeria, and we learn every day. We look at the lessons and we improve our processes and guidelines. Like, for example, I was at Lekki 3 weeks ago, and they complain of some things, that they're not on national grid. There are a lot of things that they want to do. And I said, well, this happened because that was the knowledge we had at that time. But what we do now in ICRC, every contract must have a review clause. That's part of our guideline. Because
I think the mic is
all right,
okay.
I have a big voice. Because we are aware that the dynamics will change over time. So you must have a system, a mechanism whereby the contract can be reviewed to align with the dynamics or economics of the moment. So those are the learning curve we have in the course of carrying out Operation Night House, and we have imbibed into our processes. So I think some of the experiences they had in Lekki will be different from the one they are going to have in new projects coming up now. Thank you. You are the scapegoat.
Thank you. And this one says the word the scapegoat. But 90 years is not such a long time. I think I see a lot of people here that will be here in 90 years' time. So, yes. But Jonathan, it's a good time to come to you, and this is just talking about Africa. You've seen a lot of the projects in different parts of Africa. I would say, based on your experience in this project, which countries or projects provide the best examples for Nigeria, and how can we adapt some of these learnings that you have? Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce, and good morning, everyone. So indeed, there are promising signs across the continent. And I'd just like to say, when we build infrastructure for Africa's prosperity. And there's an opportunity for all of us to learn from each other. But before I talk about other countries, I think it's important to acknowledge the progress that Nigeria has made, has been highlighted here, particularly in the ports space. And many African countries can learn from Nigeria when it comes to concessioning your ports and dealing with some of the technicalities, as you've done. So well done for that.
Thank you.
But I want to go to the future. And in the future, Nigeria can also learn from one African country that is now on concessions 2.0. And this is Mozambique. Mozambique first concessioned its ports in around 1998-2000. So they've gone quite a long way with the first phase of, let's say, concessions for 15 to 20 years. And in the last year or two, they've been negotiating with various port operators to extend those concessions. And part of the interesting thing about concessions 2.0 is governments are now more informed. They can see what the ports can do when they're efficient, and they're looking for, aspirational CapEx plans going all the way to 2050 as an example. And so in this particular case, as we've read in the press and talked to our clients, you can see competitiveness around regional corridors winning the efficiency battle, being able to make those ports in your country the ports of choice when it comes to regional trade. So I think that's a very important part. So as you think about some of the other ports in Nigeria, I think that's one point you should consider. How are you going to improve the way you concession your ports? All over the continent, concessions is the way forward. I think it's been accepted that ports perform better when they're run by private sector. And part of the reason why private sector is interested in ports is, one, they're less risky. They can come in with 1 foot in the sea and 1 foot on land. They can take advantage of, the FX flows, and more importantly, they're important for the global trading routes. So you will see a lot of investment coming into ports, and it's important that as a continent we take advantage of that. But ports are not the only important thing, because you're only as strong as your weakest point. So it's important that you think about the transport links into the hinterland. For example, how do you get more and more goods in the continent on rail? Because majority of our goods go on road. 80% of the goods and 90% of the passengers go on road. And road has more environmental implications for the continent. Rail can carry more and is more efficient. But the thing about rail is that it's a lot more difficult to do PPPs on rail because it's capital intensive, and the freight, the cargo story for the continent is still evolving. The more we trade with each other, the more the incomes go up, the more it will be possible for private sector to get involved in rail. So I think the first stage is really going to be governments prioritizing financing of rail on their balance sheets. And where those rail tracks already exist, because we inherited them from the colonialists, then we need to look for pathfinder or pilot opportunities. For example, we are seeing the Lobito corridor as an example, where we'll be transporting minerals from the DRC to Lobito. Another example is Tazara, which will be transporting minerals both from Zambia and DRC all the way to Dar es Salaam port. Those are existing railways that are already built on the balance sheet. And now it's about how do you run them efficiently? How do you make sure that there is a cargo case, a business model, to be able to run those through the private sector. And lastly, I just want to touch on roads. There are many roads in the continent, but most importantly, we need to look for the key trade corridors. And in looking for the key trade corridors, you need to think transnational. You know, for example, for Nigeria, how do you move from Lagos all the way to Algiers? How do you move from Lagos all the way to Abidjan? Because you're thinking about the intra-continental trade. And in doing that, you will most likely find those are the first types of roads that can be concessioned and tolled, because there's a lot of traffic, not only traffic within the country, but traffic that is going to neighboring countries and thinking about how do we trade with the neighbors. So we see those are the first opportunities, and a number of countries are already tolling their roads. Zambia is an example. They've done that quite well. South Africa has also tolled a couple of roads, and we're also seeing some progress in East Africa. And I'm aware there's the HDMI initiative in Nigeria, and we're looking forward to seeing some success from that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Our time is up. But as we close, we're going to ask one last question, but it's a one-word question, so just be prepared. So if you had to choose one bold action that could unlock Nigeria's gas and infrastructure potential in the next 5 years, what would it be in one word? I'll start with you, Dr. Jobson. One word.
I know it's best one word I would throw.
I know. So if you had to choose one bold action that could unlock Nigeria's gas and infrastructure potential in the next 5 years, what would that one word be?
Project enabling platform.
Okay. One word.
All right, concession.
Concession, great. Over to you, Adesua. One word.
It's hard to find a word.
Yes.
Industrialization.
Industrialization, great.
Is it me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, friendly regulation and interactive regulation.
One word.
Well, regulation.
Regulation.
Funding.
Funding.
Prioritize. You can't do everything.
Thank you. So it's concession, industrialization, regulation, funding, and prioritization.
Well, I have a word.
You do?
Collaboration.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
It brings us to the end of the panel, and then we'll open the floor for Q&A.
Exactly. Can we please first of all give them a round of applause? You know, it's been a lot of information that has been shared here. Thank you for sharing from the well of your experience. We have a few questions. Some have started to ask online, but we're going to, there's a QR code on your table. If you'd like to drop a question, scan the QR code. We'll take as many questions as we can. But our first question, someone who's already scanned the QR code dropped a question already. And this question says, why is the government not actively pursuing PPP as a viable option for infrastructure development? Is there a portal or website publicly available that shows the list of PPP projects available for private sector participation? So I'll ask the questions, and Joyce, you can direct it to whom you deem fit.
Okay, that should go for Dr. Jobson. But I think we can take 4 so that the other panelists can prepare ahead of the questions coming in.
All right, so let's take a few other questions. We have another one here, and this one says, has the gas flare monetization program been successful? What improvements can be made to enhance its effectiveness?
So that will be for Engineer Johnson.
All right. The next question says, in competing for investments, water infrastructure falls behind the topical energy and transport sectors. What can Nigeria do to improve prospects of investment into the water sector to meet SDG targets for clean water? And I think the final one here is, what role do emerging technologies play in addressing Nigeria's gas infrastructure challenges?
Doctor.
Did we all get the questions?
That means you have to get to the, I'm not sure. You have the second one.
Okay, so what role do emerging technologies play in addressing Nigeria's gas infrastructure challenges?
That's for you.
And then we have, has the gas flare monetization program been successful? What improvements can be made to enhance its effectiveness?
That's for Engineer Johnson. Okay, thank you. But I think there's one on water.
Water, okay. In competing for investments, water infrastructure falls behind the topical energy and transport sectors. What can Nigeria do to improve prospects of investments into the water sector to meet SDG targets for clean water access?
Okay, we'll pass that to Jonathan. So, but let me start with you, Yetunde, if you don't mind. Are you? Thank you.
And this is about technology.
How technology can improve our gas pipeline infrastructure.
So I think technology really comes to play when you think about reducing cost outlays. In terms of, if you think of what AI can do today, it makes a lot of activities more efficient. And of course, efficiency means less cost exposure. In the industry today, there are new technologies that are actually coming up. There's a technology now for trying to move away from steel pipelines to fiber optics. So these are, things in the future, but definitely with perfection and with more intense use, we will see how this impacts costs more likely in the industry.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please let's give her a warm round of applause. It's over to you, sir.
Okay, I just also want to add to what Madam Yetunde said in terms of technology. It also reduces much human interference. For instance, in one of the requirements to lay a pipeline in Nigeria, you have to do the route survey. And it also reduces the time because before, it takes days to actually go through with vehicles to follow all the right-of-ways through the thick forest and other things. But now, just last month, I got a request. And one thing with authority, we are open to new technology. We have a department, they call it technology adaptation. So one of the companies requested that they want to use drone to do the survey, and we approved it. And the survey that would take them days, it took them just a few hours to run through and revert back with good data that we're working with. So in terms of whether gas commercialization has actually achieved its purpose, yes, because last year or 2 years ago, the sister agency, NUPRC, actually awarded some sites, about 40-something sites. And right now, as we are talking, most of the winners have actually sent proposals for the development of those sites. That is where we are now seeing more of these small-scale LNGs coming up, because those sites, some of them are remote, and you don't have pipeline access to it. One thing also that I need to maybe just as a way of education is we hear of CNG, we hear of LNG, we hear of all those kind of this. It actually is to enable you move large quantity of gas to a distant location where pipeline is not available. It might not really be the best in terms of cost effectiveness if the distance is far, but it enables you. We know that the pipeline infrastructure in Nigeria is just developing. Last month, or 3 weeks ago, authority actually licensed gas distribution, 10 companies to go into gas distribution, which will require them to put infrastructure pipelines to take gas to other places where it's needed. But there are hinterlands where the backbone of the gas has not attained. And with the policy of government on CNG, the best way to take the gas to those areas is to put the gas in a compressed form, which is not the CNG, and you move large quantity. And then we have a company also that is moving the gas in large quantities for heavy industry users in the far north, which is now moving in form of LNG. So these are opportunities that I've now seen. Right now, as at last week, I have on my table almost about 18 applications for mini LNGs, which we are working. Out of those 18s, we have awarded the first license to about 14 of them. We have awarded two of them the second phase license, and then 4 are under review, which will eventually give them the license. And most of these mini LNGs you discover they're actually using those flare gas that have been commercialized. So I would say the flare gas commercialization is actually successful.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joseph. Thank you so much. And I think we have one more question on water.
Number 1 question.
We're saving the best.
No, sorry. I think the question is about why is the government not prioritizing PPP, and if there is a portal.
So is why the government not actively pursuing PPP as a viable option for infrastructural development? And if there's a portal or website publicly available that shows the list of PPP projects available for private sector participation?
All right, thank you. Well, I think I will say it clearly that the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been very active and very strong on using PPP in bridging the infrastructure gap in Nigeria. And that he has said at many forums, and that is also leading in almost all his engagement he has with potential investors in and outside Nigeria. And that he has also done, that provide the enabling environment. Like I said, he has charged us to reduce our processes, which we have done. And just this year, the Ministry of Budget and National Planning issued a circular to all government agencies that they must prioritize PPP as one of the means of funding infrastructure, and that they must do in compliance with the ICRC Act 2005. There was a circular to that was well published. So that shows the commitment of government in actively pursuing PPP to bridge the financial gap in Nigeria. Talking about the website, I think that those information they are asking of is available on the ICRC website, www.icrc.gov.ng. Also, we have a disclosure portal that was funded by the World Bank, wherein permissible information on most of these projects are displayed there. So you can go and see, what is permissible, so that gives you an idea about projects and the opportunities that are provided. And we also have a pipeline of projects that shows potential projects where if you have any questions or you have any interest, you can contact the ICRC. And beyond that, I've been saying it that if you have interest in any project, if you have any opportunities, approach the ICRC. We will not just act like a regulator. We are not sitting back as a regulator. We're also pursuing this project with you to the best MDA suited to actualize that project. Because I have serious strong relationship with most of the ministers and CEOs, and we form collaborations. And the president has charged all of us. He said, if you're a minister, if you're a CEO, if you're an MD, we are all one family, living in one house, but in different rooms. So it's with that approach that we approach, it's with that mindset that we approach the infrastructure landscape in Nigeria. So for anybody, please contact the ICRC in any way, but go to our website, all our social media handles, we publish information there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think the last question is for Jonathan. In competing for investments, water infrastructure.
Yeah, do you want me
falls
to?
behind the tropical, yes. I was trying to remember the question.
Yeah, water infrastructure falls behind the topical energy and transport sectors. What can Nigeria do to improve prospects of investment into the water sector to meet SDG targets for clean water access?
Thank you. So that's true. Let's start with it, that water is not really getting enough attention. 1 in 3 Africans do not have access to water. So there is a problem. But I'd also like to say that water tends to be politically sensitive. Once you've connected someone to water, turning off the taps is not easy. In fact, in many countries, access to water is a constitutional right. And so what tends to happen is many people who have access to water do not pay for the water. It's estimated that up to 40, in some cases 50% of water revenue is considered non-water revenue. So people have access to water, but they don't pay for it. Sometimes it's wastage, other times it's illegal connections. And what then happens is that the budgets that are available, even at government level, to repair water infrastructure are not sufficient, because the revenue that should be earned never comes back into the system. So that's a bit of a challenge. So I think the first thing that countries must do is improve efficiency. I did once speak to one of our clients who's experienced in water, and they said that they did an exercise between houses that were metered for electricity and houses that were metered for water, and you'd find almost half the houses paid for electricity but did not pay for water. So simple exercises like that to try and improve the ability to collect revenue is this first step in investing in water. But then the next question would be, how do you then improve the infrastructure? Part of the challenge you face is that many funders, especially in the private sector, are a bit conservative or cautious when it comes to investing in water downstream at the, if you'd call it, at the point where it is then gotten by communities because of the challenges that I highlighted. So what tends to happen is you have a bit of a hybrid. You have a number of commercial users of water who you need to identify. Those commercial users of water, be they mines or industrial companies, can pay for their water and many times can be funded by the private sector. But then you end up with what we call a blended finance, because it needs to come with some contribution from government, particularly to fund the components that go to communities. So we've seen a number of success stories of blended finance where government will put in either a grant or grants would come from the likes of World Bank, or you'd have some form of first loss credit enhancement, and then you combine that with private sector money from commercial banks and DFIs to fund the component that is going to to commercial entities in the economy. And through that approach, you kill two birds with one stone. You provide water to the communities as well as provide water for economic growth and industrialization. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
With these few points of ours, we hope we've been able to convince and not confuse you. Thank you so much for this. We'd like to please ask that you give them another round of applause. And if you may kindly rise for a group picture, we'd like to take a group picture of all the panelists. More questions have come in, but we can't take the questions in the panel session. We do have some experts, some sector experts who will be coming to address us shortly, and we'll forward the questions to the sector experts so that they can address them. But I'd like to please ask the panel session to rise for a group picture. And right after that, our group executives, please join them. Immediately after they take this picture, we'd like the group executives to join them. But can we take a picture of the panel session first? And then right after that, we have global executives from Standard Bank. Our chief executive as well will join us for the group picture. Thank you so much to those who have joined us as well on YouTube. We've seen a number of your questions and comments. Thank you very much for engaging. There's more where this has come from. Can we please have the Chief Executive join us? Our global executives as well, please join us. Rensha, can you please join us as well for the picture? Please, sir. Thank you very much. We have one more person coming, please, so hold. Please hold. Thank you. And for the audience members who are taking the pictures, feel free to tag us at Stanbic IBTC on all social media platforms and follow us there as well. Once again, can we give a round of applause to our panelists and speakers as they take their seats? Thank you very much. We will now hear from sector experts as they share their views on, continuing the conversation. Sector experts will be continuing the conversation shortly, and they'll be talking to us still about gas power infrastructure opportunities in Africa. Can we please give a round of applause, a special applause to Joy Dimpa for fantastically moderating that panel session. Thank you. Great job. Hopefully my station wouldn't see you and decide to hire you to do my show. All right. We'll then welcome someone who will set the tone for the next set of presentations that we'll be listening to. He has over 25 years of expertise in the financial services industry, specializing in oil, gas, power, and infrastructure. He has held various significant roles within the Stanbic IBTC and Standard Bank Group, including Global Head of Oil and Gas from 2018 to 2022. Please give a warm applause to the Global Head Energy and Infrastructure Client Coverage Standard Bank, Dele Kuti, as he comes forward to set the tone for the next presentations. Please, can we make the applause a little louder? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know it's been a very busy morning, and we managed to get everybody here on time. So first is to appreciate our client. Client centricity is quite important to us as Standard Bank Group, and we're extremely excited to have everyone here. So standing on all existing, protocol, a warm welcome, to everyone to this, including my colleagues and some guests that we have in this forum today. Standard Bank is Africa's largest bank. So it's quite exciting, today to know that, Nigeria has the highest population in Africa. Standard Bank also is the largest bank by assets in Africa. So you can imagine the partnership, between Standard Bank and the largest economy in Africa coming together, because it can only means that, we can drive success in the continent. Energy and infrastructure, is quite important to the sector, and is one of the key sectors that is actually driving the African growth. The chief executive for Stanbic IBTC, which is a member of Standard Bank Group, when he does the opening, we said Africa is our home, we drive the growth. For us, growth is quite important, and at the back of that, driving growth is critical to us as a bank. It's part of our purpose, and energy and infrastructure clearly sit in that bucket as we continue to see how we kind of drive growth. The sector team that I continue to lead today for the bank, the executive has over 100 years of experience, not only in banking experience, but clearly structuring and delivering transactions. So we really, really pride ourselves in working with our client to tailor solution and ensure that we can deliver to the business that they clearly want. It's been widely said that over $3.4 trillion is of investment opportunity exists in energy and infrastructure for the continent. So our job is very simple. We clearly facilitate energy and infrastructure by facilitating investment and, most importantly, deploying capital. So we are here to then ensure that we can share what we're doing on the global sector scene, try to see how we can dove that into the opportunity that we see in Nigeria. When the global sector head, I'm based in South Africa, and I've been there for 7 years now as the global head for the group. When we decided this year, we said with all the things that's going on right now, Nigeria is the first place we want to go, and we want to make sure that we collaborate and work with our colleagues to be able to, to drive the growth. So we're clearly specialists that want to enable this. And my colleagues will make sure that they talk through what we have done in Africa so that we can harness the huge opportunity in relation to gas, in relation to gas infrastructure, port, rail, power, and all those elements, as you know, are quite critical, to the growth of the continent. So we're quite excited to be here, and I'll get my colleagues to be on the table today to come out and then come and engage and share what we can do to and partner with our client to ensure that we can deliver that solution so that the GDP growth and all the estimates that the government is looking for today will be able to get there, and we can reflect on that as we move on. Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dele Kuti. And now, I'd like to welcome someone whose experience ranges across various sectors. She's previously worked with the Economic Research Department and Mining Business Unit at the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, and was seconded to the Office of the Minister of Minerals and Energy as advisor. Also, she has extensive experience in the wood and paper sector and green industries, where she led a team focused on renewable energy, energy efficiency, fuel-based energy, and other green-related initiatives. She's been focusing on the power sector since 2010, has been driving towards funding and growth of the sector across the continent. Please give a warm applause to sector lead power client coverage, Standard Bank Group, Rainsha Van Tonder. A round of applause for her.
I'm just waiting for the... Hi, everyone. I feel like the odd one out today. It's about gas and infrastructure. Normally, I get the hot spot in talking about load shedding and how we're going to solve for that. But today, it's not about power. It's more about gas and infrastructure. So please give me 15 minutes just to share with you a bit of what we do and why we're excited to be here. I think we definitely want to grow our business in Nigeria and be more of a partner with you. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of slides, but I want to set the scene first, just to give you a sense of what we see globally in terms of the energy space, and then I'll jump into Africa. And if you look at this slide, it's a bit busy, but I think it's worthwhile just pausing here, because everything is driven by energy. And linked to that is, how do we power up our industries? How do we support industrial growth? And how do we ultimately support clients to be more flexible, to be more profitable? What we see here is a few highlighted themes that I've highlighted here today. And I don't want to talk to all of them. I think AI is common known to all of you. We see energy demand and electricity demand increasing rapidly. You can just look at EVs and what that has done in the global world in terms of electricity demand. We see grid stabilization, grid storage becoming more and more of the theme. And I want to go back to AI. AI is not about energy demand only, but it's also how do we manage some of our systems better? How do we bring better utilization or production out of renewables, which we've seen already taking shape. We know that there's a geopolitical uncertainty playing out, and there was reference to Trump 2.0. I think it's just going to be such an opportunity set for all of us. At the same time, we've seen oil and gas majors trying to diversify into cleaner energy, and the best way or the easiest way is through M&A, but also how do we drive new developments in terms of growth where we see market consolidation. And we've seen that especially in your small home system type of developments, which you've had some companies very successful implementing their business models here. We've also seen, again, the emergence of nucleus, modular nuclear reactors becoming more and more of the theme and a discussion across the markets we operate in. And then I think many of us would think fossil fuels will start to take shape again and take off. Yes, I think that is probably what is going to happen, especially in Africa where we need power. But at the same time, we've seen rapid growth in renewable energy, and we actually, at this point, can't keep up in terms of what we have to finance. Sorry, this thing has lost connection. I can't move my slides. Thank you. Just go on. So just very briefly, I think some of the overviews for Africa, and again, you know, I don't want to talk about the 600 million people that don't have electricity or grid access or access to electricity. We know that. We've seen that, you know, energy investments have only been 1.2% of Africa GDP. We need to increase that. We need at least $200 billion of investment per annum to address the gap and to be able to support energy security. But at the same time, last year, we've only seen $110 billion of investment. So absolutely a key focus in terms of going forward. Again, I don't want to be negative today. I don't want to talk about the challenges when we want to finance power, but we know that it is difficult to access finance. We know we've got liquidity challenges in many of the countries. High cost of capital, which make it very expensive for our clients when we look at solutioning to them. And then in many countries, you have low sovereign ratings, and that make it very difficult to attract, you know, support and risk guarantee structures from the likes of MIGA and the World Bank. We're working very closely with them in terms of specific unlocks and opportunities where we can partner with them. I will talk a bit about transmission and grid, because it is a big limiting factor, and then just as a theme around how do we see that going forward, and how do we as a commercial bank actually find ways to address that gap. Next slide. So again, if you talk about Africa, I know this is pretty much an oil and gas play, but we've seen, you know, the drive towards new technologies, the introduction of new battery energy storage solutions, and how that has driven costs down. And it becomes more of a theme combining renewable energy with gas to power options in countries where it absolutely makes sense. And again, for me, this is just a snapshot of the massive opportunity out there and how we can help you to drive that and eventually, you know, find ways to support energy security across the continent. If we go to the next slide, if we look at the themes, I think these are critical for you just to take note. When we look at Africa, it becomes more of a regional play. It's not about my country, my unique solution, and how do I unlock sustainable supply and grid development only for myself. It's becoming more and more of an interactive play where regional development, regional connectivity is a key driver for success. We've seen that now with the South African Power Pool, the East African Power Pool, with key drivers around connectivity in specific opportunities that we can fund, driven by the World Bank, and how they crowd in the commercial banks like ourselves. I want to pause a bit with transmission. I want to give you a really good example. You know, we sit with a massive, massive drive and opportunity for this continent in the DRC with regards to critical minerals. In our bank, we like to talk about strategic minerals. It is strategic for the world, it's strategic for us as a continent. One of the biggest drawbacks or limitations for the development of those mining entities is lack of access to power. So key focus is how do we bring, sorry, just go back. How do we bring in, fast track the development of transmission development? And this is one of the key drivers where there's a deliberate focus to unlock an opportunity in a country, drive the development of transmission across different countries and link the East Africa Power Pool with the South African Power Pool, and take the opportunity where you have excess hydro in Tanzania, putting that into play. I want to quickly touch on aggregators and trading. This is a key theme. It's becoming more and more of an opportunity set, and I can see that expanding beyond South Africa and Zambia, where we are actually, as we speak, banking the many-to-many model. So that is multiple generators supplying electricity, power solutions via aggregated business model through either traders or self-generation, selling to multiple players. Now, our clients don't only want to sign a 20-year PPA on a bilateral basis to be able to make a project bankable. What this enables us to do is if we fund on a multi-aggregated basis, we can actually support clients that want shorter PPAs, different type of technologies, and aggregate that into a business model that can solution for our clients. And I think this is a big game changer, not only in the markets I've mentioned, but in many of the new markets we see. And that's driven mainly by the fact that we see open access taking shape. The three key markets currently is South Africa, Zambia, and Kenya. A very interesting example is what we've seen in Zambia. Because of the drought, we went into 18 hours of load shedding, and a massive challenge in terms of keeping economic growth and sustainable development, especially on the back of the mining companies in the region. And what we've seen is that this model, where a market has been liberalized, open access has been approved, and a clear set of rules in order to supply power from the one supplier to the end customers through a trading solution has taken shape. We've closed the first complex transaction. I call it complex because it was complex, not only to get through our various committees, and I promise not to mention the word credit today, but it is definitely one of the innovative solutions that we managed to do and continue to develop into the rest of the continent. So take some of this as next steps and next opportunities for this region. If I quickly jump to the next slide, I know I'm short on time, but just in terms of strategic priorities for Africa, and many of those are very relevant for what we see here. I want to talk about decarbonization. You'll probably hear a lot about this is not the theme anymore, but definitely what we see is decarbonization drives by manufacturing, mining companies in order to find ways to optimize their business models, but combine that with the importance of natural gas. And I think that is key to unlock. Grid integration, I spoke about it. Policy and regulatory support. We see the countries where there's clear enabling environments, clear rules of engagement and policies that's been established to attract foreign investment as a matter of this. We've seen that where we already had close to 250 billion rand of investment in South Africa, just in the power sector in the last 10 years, because of that enabling environment. We've seen a similar type of play currently taking shape in countries like Zambia and Namibia because of that. And I think that is so important. I've spoken about energy trading and cooperation, so I want to move to the last slide. And just highlight to you that, you know, these are the type of challenges that we see, but at the same time, I don't want to talk about financial constraints because I believe that together, ourselves with the DFI community, with the insurers, finding those eloquent ways to do proper risk mitigation that we can actually succeed in addressing those gaps. I mean, we have many success stories that I can talk about. We've funded Sun King Greenlight Planet in 3 different countries now, and what a success story. That was on the back of a first transaction we've done with Mkopa in Kenya. So we take these learnings, we apply that, and we execute. Another good example on battery storage is we were the first bank to do 550 megawatts of PV combined with 1.1 gigawatt hours of battery energy storage. It's a mega project. We funded 15 billion rand full underwrite. It was an 18 billion rand project. We constructed that in less than 18 months, and it's now a world-class project, the largest on the continent, showing you that utility scale PV plus battery energy storage can work, is executable and fundable, and definitely a success for our clients. I think energy access and being innovative around financing, always a key driver for us and key focus. And that's where I think there's low-hanging fruit in terms of working with yourselves, finding those solutions in this market, and be able to execute and deliver to you as our client and also broader to the sector to support growth. Thank you all.
Can we please give Rachel another round of applause? Thank you. When we finish the next presentation, we'll be able to take, if anyone has a question for her, please document it. We'll take the first question we can get in the hall here. Our next speaker is responsible for Standard Bank's gas sector coverage activities across sub-Saharan Africa, covering upstream, midstream, downstream services, and process industry gas clients. He's also heavily involved in Standard Bank's energy transition activities. With over 26 years of energy, corporate, and investment banking experience, covering the oil and gas and power and utilities sectors, he's been based in Africa for 17 years. He's currently serving as a sector lead gas client coverage, Standard Bank. Please welcome with a warm applause, Paul Edley Taylor.
Good morning, everyone. How's the volume, first of all? Great. Just checking. So let's kick off with the first slide. Okay. We've got a phrase in the office which Delhi knows only too well, and that phrase is "the gas will save us all." And we continue to have that belief and that drive to democratize and build gas in our markets. There's some great examples out there. The US is a good example, Qatar is a good example, and we hope that in the decade of gas we can support you all to broaden and develop Nigeria's gas industry. Looking at Joyce before I kick off, the word I'm going to offer, the one word is learning, which hopefully will be part of the conclusion. Just a brief comment on the credentials. Essentially, in every one of our markets which has access to natural gas or LPG, we try and be at the forefront of activities, and I'll go through some of the examples in the slides. Just to pick a good example, LNG. We've been onshore LNG, studies, advice, and financing, floating LNG financing, small-scale LNG financing, or as it's called here, mini LNG, and we're advising on the first LNG import terminal in South Africa. So gas is a core part of our operations. Next slide. Just a brief word on energy. Wrench has touched on it, so I won't overlay the point. But in essence today, there continues to be a difference between how the energy transition is portrayed in the media and what is actually happening in practice. What is happening in practice is that there's an energy addition. All forms of more energy are required each year to really deliver on the outcomes that Wrench had talked about, not just daily energy access, but also the likes of AI and data centers going forward. Nigeria has an abundance of energy. 54% of the world's energy comes from either oil or gas. So we have every expectation that Nigeria will play a major role going forward. Next slide. If there's one slide to think about and take away today, it's this slide. This is basically from our world in data, which plots GDP per capita across the x-axis and access to and consumption of energy on the y-axis. You'll see the blue dots. The blue dots are pretty much every one of Standard Bank's Africa network, and Nigeria is in the middle. The objective of all policymakers in Africa ought to be to take their countries to the right, which is increased GDP per capita, and if you do that, inherently it requires more energy consumption. That takes you higher up. And as you see, our goal and drive and purpose as a bank is to do that, is to move the countries in the blue to the right, including Nigeria. Next slide. LNG, enormously important to Africa. Just to put it in perspective globally, you might not know this, but renewable energy, which obviously Rensha is an expert in, that's about 250% more energy globally than LNG at the moment. LNG is only about 3% of global energy, renewables is 8%. But the LNG is extremely important for two reasons. One, it's very mobile, it creates energy security in different markets. And secondly, it's fast growing. So at the moment, last year there was 400 million tons of LNG demand, 411 to be precise. 206 million tons is under construction. So in the next 2-3 years, we're going to hear a lot more about LNG in all of our global markets and African markets. And part of the change in LNG is you need a lot more ships the more LNG you build. So that means a lot of markets near to Nigeria. The panelist earlier talked about regional trading. Markets such as Guinea, markets such as Sierra Leone may well be able to buy Nigeria's LNG in the next 3 to 5 years. Next slide. I'm going to whip through these slides pretty quickly and then just mention Nigeria at the end. You're obviously very familiar with the map. The main thing about the map at the moment from a gas perspective is 2 big gaps are in the process of being filled. To the west of here, Senegal and Mauritania is about to produce its first LNG. That will then have a second theme that pretty much closes out gaps in West Africa. And then to the southeast of Africa, Mozambique LNG through Coral FLNG has been producing for over 2 years. Tanzania LNG, Mozambique LNG in advanced development. So the continent is going to start getting a lot more integrated in terms of its gas trading and LNG trading over the next few years. Next slide. Kicking off in East Africa, Tanzania LNG, this is a project in which we did a study, 15 million tons, going fairly slow, but the hope is the host government agreement will be executed soon. More important to the Mozambican LNG family. Mozambique produces 3 million tons. It has an extra 35 million tons under advanced development. When that takes FID, Mozambique will be the world's 4th largest LNG exporter. And picking up on what Wrench has said about the critical minerals, one way or another, Mozambique's gas, whether it's in the form of gas through a pipeline or electricity through a transmission line, is going to support the development of the critical minerals in time. Next slide. This one needs a double click for the slide. These are the details of Mozambique. The main thing about Mozambique is the sheer scale of the capital expenditure. All in, it's roughly about 70 to 80 billion US dollars, and it will supply Asia Pacific for the rest of our lifetimes in the room. Really, really important because from a decarbonisation point of view, there is no underlying CO2 in the gas. So you'll have some of the world's cleanest LNG to support Asia Pacific's decarbonisation. Next slide. I'm going to take 2 countries in one here. So first of all, South Africa, where a number of us are based. South Africa is extremely interesting from an energy point of view. Very, very large country. There's 3 energy themes in gas. The first one is the gas that South Africa has traditionally received from Mozambique is declining. It needs to be replaced with imported LNG. We are the financial advisor to the Zululand Energy Terminal in Richards Bay, which will be South Africa's first terminal. Absolutely crucial for this project and another one to occur, because otherwise South Africa has what's known as a gas cliff in just over 3 years' time, when the entire country will run out of natural gas. In the middle of the country, there's onshore exploration and development. It's working well, but the permitting needs to speed up. And then on the west side, you see an awful lot of blue. Namibia is one of the world's most exciting energy markets at the moment. They've drilled 21 wells, of which 18 have been successful. As of last year, they had 9 billion barrels of resources, but they found another 5 successful wells since, one of which was even announced this morning. And the expectation is that Namibia's success in what's called the Orange Basin will then flow on down to South Africa. So probably it's a little bit early for a decade of gas in South Africa, but I would say that more than likely the late 20s to the late 2030s will be South Africa's decade of gas. Next slide. Angola, very interesting. Some parallels with Nigeria. What's very exciting about Angola is pretty much in the same time as Nigeria, Angola has also woken up to its own decade of gas. Angola has roughly 39 TCF of gas that's been re-injected offshore. That can be monetized. There's probably plans to expand Angola LNG. There's plans to develop small-scale LNG. And we then see fertilizer, power, industrialization, a pipeline going to Luanda as being something that will be developed over the next couple of years. Next slide. Turning to the West Africa region, Ghana has developed its gas a little bit piecemeal. The pipeline network is more or less complete, and we expect the power sector to formalize and mature as time goes by. Côte d'Ivoire, on the other hand, extremely exciting. You've had a functioning gas-to-power sector. You've had 2 major developments, Baleine and now Kalau, both by Eni. And the expectation we have is that Côte d'Ivoire could be a case in point for increased energy access, increased industrialization, and also regional gas trading. And we have every confidence in success. And then the last slide. So here we are in Nigeria. The panel has been absolutely fantastic. So it's my first time in Lagos for 12 years. So I'm going to use the phrase that the Premiership footballers are using this year. I'm going to stay humble. I am not going to recommend what Nigeria should or could do. I just don't have enough knowledge about the country at this stage. But hopefully Delhi will send me back here again very soon so I can pick up more every time. I'm just going to make 2 points in the 3 minutes left. The first one is, what are the dynamics of a successful gas market? If I look at somewhere like the US, for example, well, I have 7 different criteria I count. The first one is access to resources. Nigeria's got that. The second one is policy support. That's been mentioned by the panel. The third one is legislation. That's been mentioned by the panel. The fourth one is regulations. That's been mentioned by the panel. The fifth one is pricing. Over time, will Nigeria moved more to an American-type model, a Henry Hub, or a TTF, where you have standardized domestic pricing. That can unlock contractual certainty and investment, but of course there's trade-offs. The sixth aspect is market. Are you going to have trading arrangements? Here I'm thinking Henry Hub again, or are you going to have bilateral contracting? The two go together, pricing and markets, and it's an interesting way to increase your gas demand. And then the last point, and again, this has been a big theme of the panel we just heard, is infrastructure. How is the infrastructure going to be built out? So in the past, you only had one option, which was pipelines, but now virtual pipelines. The technology has come along. Small-scale LNG, or I must keep learning to call it mini LNG, CNG, among others. And then had a great conversation with the regulator this morning, marine bunkering. Africa, despite this being this enormous place on the map, it has lots of shipping traffic goes around the continent every day. It still doesn't have a single marine bunkering destination. Places like Singapore, Rotterdam do. The race is open for somewhere in Africa, and obviously it must be Nigeria to be the first place for marine bunkering. And I just want to make one final observation in the last minute, which is what are the role models for Nigeria? And here I'm not going down the route of saying what to do, but just an option to look at. Jonathan was kind enough to mention Mozambique. So I'm going to mention a different role model, and that is India. Absolutely enormous country, huge population, low energy access, which is just increasing. But India is very, very fascinating at the moment from a gas perspective. So the IEA just published their Indian gas market report a couple of weeks ago. Some really good pointers in there for Nigeria. The first one is that India's gas demand is expected to increase 60%, 6-0, over the next 7 years. And in an upside case, India's gas demand could increase by 100%, which would make India's gas market the same size as the whole of South America. So how have the Indians done that? They've really done 2 things in parallel. And this is where you'll start to see the example for Nigeria. The first one is they built an awful lot of pipelines. So between 2020 and 2024, India has built 7,000 kilometers of pipeline. Been talking to the regulator earlier. We know NGIC's got big plans. It's really, really exciting. And that's going to continue. Over the next 5 years, India is down to build 11,000 kilometers of pipelines, and that's underpinning the growth. Of course, though, Nigeria has advantages that India doesn't. They've both got gas, but Nigeria's got an awful lot more. It's also got oil production, which is increasing again, thankfully, which means you've got more associated gas, and you've got LNG production. So if I was to stand here with a guess, I would say that as part of the decade of gas, we're going to see a lift-off in Nigeria's gas position, where this year is all going to be about getting the policy, the regulations absolutely spot on. This is where the learning point comes in, Joyce. And then 2026 onwards will hopefully be the year of gas in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
We want to ask if anyone has questions for Paul before he returns. We can only take one, if at all, for one question for Paul, one question for Rachel. Okay, she said one word. So maybe the word will be learning. Do we have any question? Okay. But can we please give Paul Edley Taylor another round of applause? It's been 12 years since we visited Nigeria. When we are done, I'm sure that the team can put together a list of suggestions on the things he needs to do and the foods he needs to try out before he leaves again. He has started. Brilliant. So thank you so much to everyone who has been a part of the Gas and Infrastructure Conference. We certainly have a number of questions that have come in, but what the team has decided to do is to collate these questions, reach out to our sector experts and get them to answer these questions, and then we'll put out an article to publish them on our website so all the questions will be answered. Please follow us on all social media platforms at Stanbic IBTC, and be sure to visit our website so you can keep updated with the answers to your questions. And to wrap the activities of today quite nicely, please join me as I welcome the Acting Chief Executive, Stanbic IBTC Holdings. Please a round of applause for Kunle Adedeji as he comes for the closing remarks. We can make the applause louder.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As we come to the end of this insightful conference, I would like to take a moment to appreciate your presence, the time you spent with us, and the innovative ideas and perspectives shared by our participants. Our conversation, no doubt, have reinforced the critical role of gas and infrastructure in driving Nigeria economic growth. The contribution from our distinguished panelists and speakers has also been very insightful. The good thing also is that we also had regulators among the panelists, and we've heard all the new things that have been done to encourage investment in the sector. So on behalf of Stanbic IBTC Standard Bank team, I extend my sincere gratitude to everyone for the participation. The room is still full up to the end. We expect that all this discussion should translate into investment in the near future. Once again, thank you, and we look forward to more partnership and collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, sir, for that closing remark. This is where we say thank you to everyone who has been a part of Stanbic IBTC's Gas and Infrastructure Conference. We've explored opportunities in Africa with a particular focus on Nigeria. And I'm hoping that you can go home thinking about what the one word is for you. I said my one word is collaboration. When you see someone, I'm sure there'll be a lot of networking happening. Before you ask them their name, ask them, what's your one word? And then you get to know their name, and we can take the conversation further. My name is Olive M.O.D. I've enjoyed being your host, and I thank you very much for your attention. We have lunch for you at the back, so please do well to make your way to the back. Fill your bellies with a lot of food and a lot of laughter. Until we see you again, please remember to engage us on all platforms at Stanbic IBTC. Now let's round up with a round of applause for everyone who has participated here today, as well as our virtual audience. You are the best. Thank you so much. We've seen your comments, your likes on YouTube as well as on LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone. Safe journey home.
Trust does not come cheap. It's a word you can bank on. It's a word you can bank on. The efficiency you can trade with. Trust should be what you demand. Trust is the insight you base your business decision on. In our world of corporate trust should give your dreams wings, taking you above and beyond your borders. You have to trust your gut to your growth, and trust that your dreams are valid. With your trust should be what you demand and what every partner should give. Trust in our world of corporate etiquette. Trust is a big word. A word that guides and leads your commitment to your growth and that of your business. Go for growth with your trusted partner. Trust is a big word. A word that guides and leads our commitment to your growth does not come cheap. Your business. Go for growth with your trusted partner. It's a word you can bank on. The efficiency you can trade with. Trust is the insight you base your business decision on. Trust should give your dreams wings, taking you above and beyond your borders. You have to trust your gut and trust that your dreams are valid. Trust should be what you demand.